I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like everyone to know that Assistant Superintendent Forget is not here tonight because his hot water heater burst at home, so he's plumbing and bailing tonight. So I'm sure he'd rather be here and not doing that. Is there anyone in the public that would like to address the committee on any item not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none. Moving along to the consent agenda. Is there any item that a member of the committee would like to remove from the consent agenda for separate discussion?
With your permission, I would like to add an item. We have admitted at a late notice of a DECA visit to Boston that starts tomorrow, the 10th, and finishes on the 12th. It's the regular DECA competition. We have a new teacher who may not have been fully aware of all the deadlines that he needed to meet, but this is a routine visit by DECA to a competition in Boston.
Does anyone have any questions on that? Could we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented plus the item that Mr. Farmer just presented? A second?
A second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. There are a couple of things that I would like to do under the chairperson's remarks in business. First, last week, Dina talked to us about the Suburban Coalition's resolution, and that was also something that Narissa had brought to my attention. So I'm going to ask Dina to kind of summarize that again to refresh our memories, and then I would like us to take a formal vote on that.
Thank you, Deb. Suburban Coalition is a group of active school committee members and school committees that work to bring information to our legislators and try and change things. And they came up with this resolution calling for full funding of the Foundation Budget Review Commission's recommendations. As you recall, they finished that review this summer, and they have done nothing to act upon it. And so their resolution, do you want me to read the whole thing, Deb? I don't think, you just want the rationale?
Yes.
The rationale is that the formula was first established as part of the ed reform in 1993 and has not been thoroughly reviewed or updated since then. And if the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission that were issued this summer were implemented for this budget, state funding for education would have been about $500 million more than it was. And Chapter 70 reflected if Chapter 70 reflected the true cost of education, the number would have been closer to $2 billion. So what this resolution is doing is asking the legislature to put forth, they put forth the commission review, now they want them to act upon it. And I know I heard from Alicia Greco, Newbury Board of Selectmen approved this last night and signed on, and at the district communications meeting last week, when I brought this up, we asked that the boards of selectmen do the same, and that we were going to vote on this as well. So if anybody has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Could we have a motion to endorse the
Resolution.
thank you,
calling for full
resolution
funding.
that Dina just described? Could we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions regarding the resolution that Dina presented?
I just wanted to add, I know a number of the other school committees are also sending it on to their town finance committees. I was wondering if we could do that in addition to the Board of Selectmen.
They were given the same information.
Thank you.
I don't know if they're voting on it, though, because I know in Newbury, I don't know, that they vote to recommend things, but I don't know that they would sign on. But yes, I'll check with that again.
Could I just say that typically the protocol would be that this committee would contact the Board of Selectmen, not finance committees directly, because that would look like doing an end run. Just protocol.
We will follow up with the boards of selectmen, at least the two that we have not yet heard from. All right, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. And the next item that I would like to put in this place is a video that is made by one of our students, and Mr. Farmer brought this to my attention. It is a 5-minute video that is very good. I guess it was made for a history class. Was it made for her history
Correct,
class?
yes. It was part of a history project. It's about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Rather than write an essay, the issue is being interpreted through video journalism by Sarah Maggiacomo, who regularly actually does the mundane job of just dealing with this. But when you look to see at the creativity of what you're going to see now, it is, when I saw it, I just replied, brilliant. It is, I think, an exceptional piece of work. And with the Chief Academic Officer's help and...
The student is not here tonight because she's at a banquet, but she
was very disappointed she couldn't be here. She's at
Right.
the kind of track and field dinner.
What I remember the most is President Kennedy being on TV. We didn't find out about the missiles until he spoke. I mean, there were talks about stuff going on in Cuba, but being 18, you really didn't pay an awful lot of attention to it.
I was 8 or 9 at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
You know, most people see what they see on television and hear what they hear, but they don't really know what's going on.
Height of the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union have been racing to build more and more nuclear weapons. The question became, how close can each country put their nuclear missiles to the other without disrupting the very, very delicate balance that was mutual assured destruction.
Our lives were right at stake because anything could happen. We were terrified of Khrushchev, not knowing what he was going to do to us or to our country. And I think everyone in Ireland was scared of him. Everyone. We were terrified. If we saw a plane, we would think that it was him that sent it.
The Soviet Union decided to put medium and short-range nuclear missiles on Cuba that were then discovered by an American U-2 spy plane. Then the question became inside the American administration, how do we get them out?
We basically had the opinion of brinkmanship, which is threatening to go to nuclear war, and it looked like for a while to the world we were very close to Kennedy and Khrushchev actually declaring war on each other.
If you negotiate, if you're only going to use diplomacy, how do you verify? If you're going to invade, what is the point of your invasion? Cuba hadn't done anything aggressive, so you would have this very large country attacking a very small country that has a very long and complicated history with. And then, of course, if you bomb, how do you know that you've got them all? And if you don't get them all, and the Soviets decide to fire them, or the Cubans decide to fire them, then there's trouble. Every option, with the exception of the one that was chosen, it seems, would have led to some larger scale.
Like, it wasn't enough that we thought the world was already ending. We started to do these drills and turn on the fire alarm and say, okay, when you hear the alarm, you dive under your desk. And I remember even as a child thinking, like, really, this is gonna prevent a bomb from destroying us? It was kind of surreal. It felt like everything had gone crazy, just like that. Like, what is happening? The world is ending, and now we have to hide under our desks.
I mean, we never thought that Khrushchev would back down. So that's why they thought Kennedy was the best guy in the world.
He just made you feel safe. Though he was so calm, and he kept his calm. For me, to get the Russians to back down was the biggest victory ever. When he made a speech, you never forgot it. You know, just like his inaugural address, you just don't forget it.
What I think the biggest impact is that the Soviet Union and the United States thereafter JFK and Nikita Khrushchev at that time had essentially that hotline in which they were able to communicate to each other and in time of need, if necessary. Obviously, that was very necessary. This was the first time to halt any type of world war at that time.
It certainly led to at least getting some agreement on not testing nuclear weapons in outer space.
Well, I think the Cuban Missile Crisis showed us how scary nuclear war can be and the potential for nuclear war, and I don't think we ever saw anything of that scale happen again after the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal.
So there's some takeouts here if you'd like to watch them.
There was a trail by the name of Bert, and Bert the sailor was very alert. When danger threatened, Billy never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He ducked and covered, ducked and covered. You and you and you and you, ducked and covered.
So.
I remember ducking and covering. Monique, you remember ducking and covering. Yes, I thought so.
I remember saying goodbye to my friends. I was just telling Dina goodbye because I didn't think we would be alive the next day. Larkin really believed it.
I just remember having to go underneath my desk in the second grade.
Yeah.
Like.
Well, Sarah's a junior, and I know that Mr. Cord is looking forward to having her in his class next year.
Perhaps there'll be another movie.
Well, he's in a conversation, he's already said, well, some students might write an essay, but Sarah will probably do some video journalism to tell her story.
Yeah, very good.
Very good.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I mean, clearly the skill in that is choosing what it is that you film and what it is, the sound that you're putting on to tell the story. I think it's an exceptional piece of work. And I think we ought to try and get it on Facebook and get Twitter connections and let the world see it as far as we can.
Can you link it to the school's website in
Yes.
some way? Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is a student representative's report. Shannon?
Hi, everyone. So today is Wednesday, March 9th. With the warm weather today, it is finally beginning to feel like spring. It's hard to believe that we are approaching the fourth quarter. Progress reports marking the halfway point were published on Aspen last week. There is much to look forward to in the weeks ahead, but I would first like to reflect on some of the events which occurred over the course of the last month. To begin, I would like to recognize the girls' varsity basketball team, who is playing in their semi-final tournament game at this very moment against Watertown. They are the last Triton team left in the winter tournament, so hopefully they can keep up the good work and make it to the final round. With that said, all of Triton's sports teams have had excellent seasons and were very competitive this winter. Spring sports will begin practicing on Monday, March 21st. Aside from athletics, the drama department did a phenomenal job with the production of their winter musical Bring It On, which they performed last Thursday through Sunday. A few friends and I saw it Friday evening, and we had a great time. Not only was the singing great, but many students said the play was genuinely funny and had everyone laughing the whole way through. Prior to the weekend, last Thursday, a large number of Triton students participated in Read Across America, a community service event in which students visited the 3 elementary schools in the district to read to children of all ages. One of my classmates and I were assigned to read to a 3rd grade classroom at Pine Grove. The book we were given was The Little Red Hen, and although the students enjoyed it, I think they were far more fascinated by the fact that they were living, breathing high school students in the classroom. It was refreshing to see their sincere curiosity and to answer their questions about the high school. As far as this week, yesterday Triton hosted the annual blood drive in the gymnasium, where student volunteers gathered to both donate blood and help keep the event running smoothly. Although I was not able to participate myself, I know that a large number of students stepped up to donate, and it was a successful day overall. Tomorrow, March 10th, as I am sure you are aware, is the District Arts Festival where students from all the schools come together to showcase their talents and skills. The festival ends with a district-wide concert in the evening. And then Saturday, March 11th, is the Winter Marching Show, which will be held in the gym from 2 to 9:30 p.m. Additionally, for seniors, scholarship applications are due to the Guidance Department by the end of the school day tomorrow. The Mentors and Violence Training Program through the Jeannie Geiger Crisis Center continues the training of 32 students. The next scheduled training is on Friday, March 11th. And then the Foreign Language National Honor Society induction is being held on March 17th, and our Mr. THS competition is being held in the auditorium on March 18th. MCAS ELA tests begin on March 22nd, and the long compositions and ELA reading comprehension will take place on the 23rd and the 24th. The date for the third and final guest speaker of the Leadership Series has not yet been announced, but will be coming in the month of March to kick off spring sports and the final stretch of the year. The 25th is Good Friday, so there will be an early release for all schools in the district. Although March is a long month on the calendar, with all the activities and programs happening, the month does seem to fly by. The next committee meeting will be held on Wednesday, April 13th. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Shannon? Dina?
I just have one comment. I saw the play Friday night, too, and it amazes me time and time again what they are able to do. But with so many solos and everything else, it just boggles my mind that these kids get up there and sing. I can't sing it to save my life, but just what they can do and the confidence they have is just outstanding. Congratulations to all of them. It was fabulous.
I have a parliamentary style question for Shannon. Shannon, I wonder if you know that on my bookshelves I have a copy of The Little Red Hen.
You do?
I was given as an effort prize as a very young boy.
Well, good to know. They're reading good literature.
No, my point is that good literature goes on and on and on and on. It lives forever.
Thank you.
This is sort of, it's not a high school student's topic, but I'm fascinated from afar about the Rubik's Cube competition that is at Salisbury Elementary tomorrow. It's from 4 to 7. I'm not sure how much there is to watch, but Salisbury Elementary School is hosting a Rubik's Cube competition from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., and there will be other schools coming to this competition. So I hope that perhaps we'll have a report from that at our next meeting.
Is that the second one? Did they have another one?
No. This
is the first time they've done it? Okay. Yeah, I heard about something that like a lot of schools are coming and are involved. Yeah.
More than, I think.
And all ages, too.
Yes, I think that it has turned out to be a much bigger event than they initially anticipated. I think initially they might have thought it was just going to be local students, but yeah, so.
We probably ought to attach Kathy Cummins' name to the event because she is the kind of instigator who got students interested in the first place and gave me a yet unresolved puzzle that's on my desk.
This is another thing. And okay, I don't get out of town much. Today I didn't get out of town at all. But in my travels back and forth to home and work today, I happened to drive by the Salisbury Library. And out on the lawn were two groups of students, Salisbury Elementary School students. And I just thought it was just wonderful because they had gone to the library and then they were sitting out on the lawn doing activities after that. So
my understanding is that there's some philanthropic help to get the children there.
There is, yes. And there were 2 buses provided to take students over there, and they were there, I think, for 2 hours, I think.
I'm sorry, I can't remember. I think it's the Institution for Savings, but I can't be sure.
No, I think it's Mr. Capilupo.
Mr. Capilupo, right.
So thank you to Mr. Capilupo for 2 buses. Thank you, Shannon.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
New business, to consider and agenda items and proposed to consider and agenda items proposed for future meetings.
It should say approve.
That's right. And any items of an urgent nature to be considered at this meeting. Okay. Try to rehearse my reading. Next item on the agenda is the school calendar for 2016-2017, which is in your packet. The
There are
recommendation.
1 or 2 things to say about the FY17
Okay, well,
Is that okay?
of course.
Two of the town's boards of selectmen have voted to approve the extension. We haven't got the last one in, but clearly that is going to happen. It's important that you know that the P&N committee is working hard with the Public Employees Committee and kind of moving the needle to make further savings. And my view was that the last meeting was very positive, that they clearly see the need to try to reduce that cost as far as possible. I think that's going very well under the leadership of Dina Sullivan. And when we get to the P&N committee, we have a recommendation from the P&N committee for an early retirement incentive scheme that we believe will achieve the objectives that we set out, and we can come to that later. So, thank you.
Sorry, I jumped by that. The recommendation is that the school committee approve the school calendar for the 2016-2017 year as presented, and it is here in your packet. Could we have a motion to do that? A second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion or any questions on the proposed school calendar?
I have one
Ina?
question. Why are we off on January 2nd?
Because New Year's Day is on a Sunday.
Is that contractual?
That's
or-
statutory, I believe. This has been agreed with the Teachers Association.
Any other questions on the school year calendar for next year? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, the North Shore Education Consortium, to consider and approve an amendment to Section 758 of the North Shore Education Consortium Collaborative Agreement, which would have the effect of removing the limit on the allowable variance between consortium member and non-member tuition fees as approved unanimously by the consortium board at its meeting on February 3rd, 2016, by deleting the last line of the section, non-member tuition and fee differentials should not exceed 10%.
I think I mentioned this issue to you on a previous meeting. The full text of the relevant paragraph is in front of you on North Shore Education Consortium paper. When the DSE gave guidance on the new collaborative agreements that had to be put in place on the basis of new statute, their strong recommendation was that there couldn't be a fee differential of more than 10% between those charged to members of the consortium and non-members. The intention was to delete that. As it went through, the Finance Committee recommended deleting it, and at the end of the day, it got through. So now the board has voted twice as a board to remove this line, because clearly it handcuffs the consortium in terms of what is a reasonable differential between members who work hard to, the board works hard. I mean, you see how often I go either to the board or finance committee meetings to govern the institution, whereas members are not making that commitment of time and effort. So it was felt that this recommended limit was actually creating difficulties for the collaborative in setting the tuition fees that it believes are reasonable, and that is why the board has now voted twice to delete it. We need a majority of school committees who are in membership of the collaborative to endorse that, so that it can then go off to the Commissioner for his approval. We understand that the Commissioner will approve it if a majority of school committees who are in membership will endorse it.
Could we have a motion to approve the amendment change? Could we have a second?
Dina. Go ahead. I just want to ask a question after.
I'll second.
And Monique, you have a question?
Christopher, did you say this is going to be statewide, that there
No,
won't be?
this
is
applies
just-
only to this consortium.
Oh, okay, all right. So in other words, they get to set their fee as to the true cost. It has nothing to do with any
Well,
prescribed
the,
differential.
the board met today and gave a first reading to the budget and tuition fees for next year. The board sets the tuition fees. Basically, what it does is for each program, it tries to set a fee which meets the cost of the program and is competitive with other collaboratives, because we're in an education market, as you know, and a director of special education may have some choices as to where to recommend a student. We place ours in 2 consortia whenever we can, CREST or not the North Shore. So the setting of the rate has what does it cost to run the program, what are others charging for it, and something else that we have been talking about recently is the fee structure such that we can maximize the benefit from the circuit breaker, because as you know there's a specific figure. I think it was 41,000 last year, and we supposed to get 75% of the difference of the base to the actual charge. And clearly, if we can set fees which up them a little, and we can get circuit breaker help, that can be a cost benefit. So those are the issues which are in play here.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next, to receive the annual report for the 2014-2015 year and raise any questions arising therefrom.
The consortium is required to present this report to you for your consideration. You're not required to approve it, but it is for your information, and clearly, if there are matters of concern, it gives you an opportunity to raise them.
Any questions on the annual? Okay. Next item, could we have a motion to appoint Superintendent of Schools elect Brian Forget to the board of the North Shore Education Consortium effective July 1, 2016?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next, policy approvals. Third-party student surveys, Annex 8 in your packet. To approve a new policy on approval and administration of third-party student surveys as a second reading subsequent to the holding of a public hearing on February 24th, 2016, which was held on February 24th. Could we have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next, could we have a motion to approve a revised policy on student physical restraint as a second reading? Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Next, could we have a motion to approve a new policy on the administration of Narcan as a second reading?
Make a motion.
And I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Next, we have stadium redevelopment to receive such oral report as may be available at the time of the meeting.
I need to report to you that we were expecting to open bids today. About 36 hours ago, it became clear that there was a technical issue around the insurance part of the project, which had been raised by one of the contractors. It was a mission that should have been taken care of by people who we were paying to do that work, but it slipped through. Contractors are entitled to, I think it's 48 hours notice of any minor changes, and that means that the bids will now be opened on Friday at 1:30 p.m. The intention is that Brian will do work on that and bring to you on the 23rd of this month a recommendation as to the contract that the committee should approve.
Any questions for Mr. Farmer? I'm not sure about the next item, the appointment of the school business official.
We are not ready to take that at the moment. Brian has been leading that search. There have been interviews which have included one member of the school committee who's a member of the finance committee, and a variety of central office staff and a principal. They narrowed the field down to two. Those two candidates have been interviewed by a group not including, but it was Brian, Kimberly and me. We have two strong candidates, and Brian now needs to go through the final process of having discussions with them and determining who he wishes to recommend to you for approval. Can I remind you that essentially it's still my responsibility to make the approval of recommendation of superintendent. We will do that together. Your role is really to approve the recommendation unless you have good grounds for feeling that it's not the right choice. I'm confident that we have two candidates who will be very capable in the job. So I think that's likely to come to you on the 23rd. If we need to do something urgently to catch a candidate who might go somewhere else, then we will talk with the chair about having a special meeting.
Any questions for Mr. Farmer? No. Next item on the agenda is to appoint a representative of Rowley and Salisbury, from Rowley and Salisbury, respectively, to the Whittier Regional Vocational Technical High School Board. This is our responsibility as the school district that represents those towns. And first we have from Salisbury, Elena Gilbert. Could we have a motion to approve Elena Gilbert as the representative to Salisbury on the Whittier Regional Board? Could we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Next, could we have a motion to appoint David Irving as the representative from Rowley to the Whittier Vocational Board?
I'll make the motion.
Could we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on David Irving's appointment? All those in favor? Thank you. Next, Mr. Farmer, report of the superintendent of schools.
Thank you. You've got my schedule here. I should let you know that the coach of the girls' basketball team had to be prevented from contacting you to see if I could be released from the committee tonight because they've won both times I've been to watch them. They won a pulsating, really exciting game against very much favoured Swampscott the other day. They played with such determination and pluck. It was wonderful. I went to a very enjoyable swim and dive team banquet. It's very interesting that swimming and diving, apart from relays, is very much an individual sport. And yet, as a group, and there are 4 schools involved because there's Georgetown, Newburyport, and Pentucket students swim and dive within the combined team. The kind of family atmosphere that they have generated between themselves was really quite remarkable. It was a very pleasant evening. I don't think there's anything else I need to pick out of there. There is an issue around the Pine Groves. Well, there are 2 issues, one for the chair and one recommending here. When Brian and I were thinking about the complexion of the composition of the committee after your last meeting, we realized there's no teacher on that committee, and felt that was something that should be considered. Given that there needs to be some attention given to the balance between town representatives and district representatives, you'll see that the recommendation is that the committee should seek to secure the appointment of 2 faculty representatives to the Pine Grove School Building Committee, assuming there will probably need to be some discussion with the town about the overall balance of the committee.
And in addition to that,
In addition to that,
at our last meeting, we discussed asking the school council in Rowley to appoint some people to be on the committee, and the PTA, as you may have read, is very anxious that they be allowed to participate in selecting somebody to sit on the committee. So Brian is communicating from afar. And this is an email that Brian sent earlier today. Deb Egan said that the Board of Selectmen would like to have one appointed by the PTA and one by the school council. He also mentioned to Deb Egan that we add 2 teachers, and it made sense. And the parent and teacher reps would be considered other by category and could be added by the town or the school district. So based on that input and the communication that Brian has had with Deb Egan, then I think we will proceed and get in touch with the Board of Selectmen and the PTA in order to have that happen. Does anybody have any comments or questions about that?
Can I just ask
Sure.
one question? I know when the original paperwork came through with the chart and who should be on it, it also listed community members, and I just want to, is there, I don't know if it goes to the selectmen or goes to the school committee, but is there an option to make sure that one of those open spots could also potentially, if there was an invested community member, go to them? The only thing I'm thinking about is just with, I mean, there could be a set of neighbors in the area that would want to request a neighbor on the board, or because the school is inside the historic district, maybe the historical society would want to have someone on that committee. I just want to make sure there's an avenue somehow for that to happen.
there is an avenue, and my understanding is that the Board of Selectmen have appointed Mrs. Summit within that category.
Okay.
Not as the treasurer collector.
Okay.
I'm just sharing that for information.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I
just meant-
I think what are you saying that you wouldn't want anybody to be excluded who wanted to participate?
Exactly. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure there's an avenue for their consideration of inclusion. And I don't know whether that comes here or whether that goes through the Board of Selectmen. I just want to make sure that if there are other invested parties, that there's a method, that there's a process.
Putting it out there to the public, I think if there were interested parties who wanted to participate on the building committee, they should contact either the school committee or the Board of Selectmen. And I think when we had this discussion last week, we thought that having the school council participate would open the avenue for community members and other people other than just parents to be on it, because the more stakeholders that participate, the better. So yes.
Could I just caution you that Brian was working off a template provided by the MSBA, which provides a number of categories. I was involved with the building committee in Gloucester. You do not want a football team size group doing that. It has to be a manageable, focused, directed, everybody attending meetings kind of body. And so while I can see there's merit in having stakeholders as far as possible involved, I would counsel that there needs to be some balance between inclusion and having a group that is kind of fit to do the job.
Right, and I think we had that discussion also, that while there is no limit on the number of people that can be on a building committee, we don't want it to get unwieldy. And that I know that we mentioned that one person can fulfill more than one category on the committee. But I still would urge anybody who's interested to at least make contact.
So for the minute, we're going to contact the towns and...
Yes. One town.
One town. I've included the communication that I sent off to our state representatives, so it's in the record, and I've put round the table responses that I've had from Senator Tarr and Representative Hill. The latter has recently contacted my office, suggesting that he meet with the Assistant Superintendent and myself to have a discussion around the Chapter 70 issues. Shall I go on? 5B was raised as an issue at your last meeting. I hope that the text is self-explanatory. This, as you recall, is to do with I call them branches rather than departments, because branches have a kind of organic feel to them rather than being silos, which is our experience of working with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. That the Chief Academic Officer's support has been substantially cut. Clearly, people are looking to maintain employment, and when there's uncertainty, good people look. And what this recommendation is doing is asking the committee to commit to funding the Coordinator of Teaching and Learning position in FY17 as a strategic act. And you have the job description. It may look a little nebulous because it's very much project-based and things change. And this position sort of takes up new projects and moves them forward, because the lady on my left has got a lot of wider responsibilities.
Let's move the recommendation and then we'll have a discussion. Could we have a motion to commit to funding the Coordinator of Teaching and Learning position in FY17? Could we have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion, questions? Paul?
Could we get some idea what level of funding we're talking about?
It's about 90,000. I mentioned earlier the work that the P&N is doing on health. That looks as if that's probably going to achieve about 150,000 in savings, as compared with an increase in funding. And we believe that the early retirement scheme will probably generate maybe 100,000. So there's about $250,000 there that will go towards any shifting of the budget towards affordability for the towns. And we haven't completed the work yet.
Any other questions, comments? Dina?
I've read the job description, which I'm grateful that was included. I understand the importance of this position, but quite honestly, I have concerns about saying that we're going to commit to protecting one position when we have other teachers and other positions that could be cut. I'm hoping that, as you said, Mr. Farmer, that with the savings that we are hoping to realize through negotiations, that we won't have to cut. But I just am leery about supporting this. I'm sorry, Kim.
I'd like to second that. I personally, I have gone back and forth over this since we heard about it last week, and I just find it very difficult for the same reasons that Dina just cited. You know, as much as you would love to save or hold on to the staff and make sure that they feel very comfortable here, which I would hope they do, safeguarding one position, I just struggle with that.
Can I come back? There are times when leaders have to make tough decisions which are unpopular for the good of the organization. And waiting and waiting and waiting means that at the end of the day, we may lose the opportunity of having that resource because it won't be there. And so we'll go out, and if there is funds there, look to replace by somebody, instead of somebody who's got 2 years experience, has demonstrated excellence, we start training somebody else to do that job. I understand the kind of equity thing, and let's wait until we're clear of where we are. The reality is that leaders make decisions often with the information they've got, because they can't wait for all the information they'd like to have to make the perfect decision. And I'm asking you to take a leadership role tonight.
I think this role is very important in the school system. I've seen people that do a fabulous job and almost help turn a school around, and I've seen people that don't do such a good job and to the detriment of the school. So if you think that we have someone that's really good and is an asset to the district, I would favor what you propose. I also think that it's a remote chance that we'll eliminate this position. I think it's pretty remote. That's just my own feeling, but I support this because I think it's so important in this day and age to have this position and have a good person in the position. And you seem very confident in this person.
I am, and I think if we look at what's happened to one or two neighbouring districts that haven't had that kind of leadership, and I won't mention any, but I think one or two you will know, the districts that I'm talking about, who don't actually have a curriculum initiative.
Flounder. When you don't have someone in that position, that knows what they're doing, understands the needs of the teachers, the whole system flounders. It's not to anybody. It's not an asset. It's penny wise and dollar foolish, I think.
Paul?
Ms. Farber, I just want to get a better understanding. We're talking about a person that's already in the district. Isn't that the case?
Correct.
So it's not really $90,000 when I talk about
It's
what
not
level of-
additional, no. It's in the budget now.
Yeah, it'd be a small bump, if anything?
It will be 2%.
Of 90,000. Linda?
And I think the, with the amount of teachers and curriculum that has been discarded because of budgets, I think a person in this position, the teachers need someone in this position in order to help them to grow and to teach the students as best they can. And I think if we're leaving all of it up to one person like Mrs. Croto, I mean, I think she will be overburdened, and then the teachers in the end will be overburdened. So the people who will be suffering will be the students anyways. So I just think we need to, with the budget we have, trying to sustain and strengthen where we can. And it sounds like, according to the administration, that will strengthen at least helping the teachers and what they're doing. That's my.
Can I just add, part of this is the fact that as teachers are starting to hear that their jobs could be eliminated, that word is getting out. So sometimes really strong people are getting sought after in different districts. And so when you have somebody who's very secure and doing the PD and going out and supporting teachers, because frankly, the majority of my time these days is behind the desk because of all of the other additional cuts, that I'm not able to be moving some of these things forward and supporting teachers. I don't want to put any more on teachers' lap to say, here's a new initiative, it's written out in this paper, call me if you need anything. Do you know what I mean? But so that they can interface with somebody on a regular basis that can be there in the front lines to support them and to help them. And so also, because I have no PD budget, this particular person does a lot of the PD after school for teachers. And so that's an advantage, as well as in the summertime. So again, I think one of the concerns right now is, again, this is not an additional position that is asking, or that we're asking to be requested, but we know that there are certain districts who are looking at some talent that might be up for grabs. And so when you have somebody who is not sure of their future, they may take another position if that were available to them. And when you, like you said, when you've invested in a person and that person is developing some relationships in places that relationships may not have been before, and we're starting to move forward, and that takes some time to have to let somebody go prematurely and then have to start and look and find another person. And people skills and that type is something that when you find the right person, it's important to maintain that. For not for me to make not my job easier, but really it's for the teachers and the kids. It's really about them. So.
Any other comments?
Yeah, can I ask a question? I'm glad you're saying that, Kim. I mean, you know, the PD part isn't necessarily in this job description.
Right.
Can you tell me more about what this person in this job actually does?
Yeah.
Working with the teachers is very broad.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yep.
is she actually in the
No,
classroom
so
doing a lesson?
I
or-
can just speak of last Friday. We had a half PD day, and she took a group of high school social studies teachers, and she met with them, and she organized the whole reading, the whole writing prompt initiative. So she set up the whole middle school teachers within the middle school, got all their papers sorted, got the rubrics, went over it, we calibrated with the teachers, and then she went and met with the group to help them calibrate at the high school level. That's never happened before at the district level. So again, bringing up conversations around writing in history class that has never happened before. And so sometimes too, when you start this process, you realize, wow, we need more of this. We have not paid a lot of attention to this particular area. So now she can take that forward and supply the PD that is necessary. She goes back and records all of the data for those writing samples, because we can't, again, add more to the teacher's plate, but what we can do is plan accordingly. Based on that data, we can identify PD, and we can look at that. We can present the data to the teachers, and then provide follow-up to PD, to say, okay, here are where your students are right now. How do we move them to the next place? What's the instructional practice look like? That takes time, and that's just one element. I don't have the time to do that anymore. I can support her. I can say, what do you need from me? But that's just one piece of it. She worked with the preschool teachers. Their handbook hadn't been revised for 10, 15 years, and so she's working with them. Sure, could we leave it on the district and say we'll change the date and we'll get to it when we can because we don't have time? But I don't want to be a part of a district that just leaves it there. It's too important. These families, it's their first opportunity to interface with the district. And I want to make sure we give them the best possible welcoming handbook there is. And so she's taken some time to work with the preschools. I don't have time to do that, to work with the preschool teachers, to sit down and go through page by page of the handbook. It's not all in the profile of a job description, but when I get an email to say, Kim, can you help with X, Y, and Z, and I'm busy doing grants or whatever it is that I need to do, she takes up and goes forward with it. So if we want to move forward and maintain and keep getting better and stronger in certain areas, because we do have to get better and stronger in certain areas, we're not perfect. If we want to continue in that path, we need to have the right people. We have new science standards that have just been adopted, and we are starting right now to lay the groundwork for how we're going to unpack those standards, how are we going to look at what we're doing in science classes. And so, again, that is going to require a lot of time. We don't have science coordinators at the elementary and the middle school level. So, again, we need that important person who is freed up to just really get down and focus on those pieces and then to interface with the teachers.
It goes back to Mr. Farmer's ship.
Yes. I thought you said something else.
Ship. Boat.
With the sails. She's a sail. Absolutely.
So, I'm sorry, Deb, can I ask one more question? So, Kim, I'm hearing that this person works with teachers throughout the district. It's not just elementary or whatever.
Right, absolutely. And I want to say she's been strategically placed at the middle school and high school right now.
Well, thank you for that explanation. That gives me more information.
Yeah.
And they are a very hard nut to crack.
Any other comments?
I want to make one more comment.
Okay.
I think the other thing we need to think about at the middle school and the high school level is when you have a person like that that understands the big picture, that person assures equity across the teachers because every teacher understands the same thing. And I don't think that can be underestimated. That is a very important component of that level, I think, of education. I've been out of it for a while, but I think I'm on the money with that.
I think it was last week. We've had several meetings, so I'm not positive of the date, but I think Brian was speaking about something and mentioned how many people were doing the job that Kim does. When Dina and I first got on the school committee, there was somebody that did just secondary education, somebody that did just elementary education, and so on and so on. And those positions were consolidated. So there may have been 4 or 5 people doing what 2 people are doing now, I think. And it hasn't gotten any simpler in the last 10, 15 years to run a curriculum in a school district. The other thing is that I try to remember this, and I think I learned it a long time ago, that I am not a professional educator. I am not. I know a lot about schools because I've sat on this committee for a long time, but I am not a professional educator. This is one of those decisions that I really feel I need to defer to the professional educators who we have entrusted to run the school district. And so it's my opinion that if they, the professional educators, have really looked at this hard and thoroughly, then I would support it. And as Paul pointed out, or asked it to be pointed out, this is in the budget right now.
Yes.
Plus, the other thing I'd add to it is that in the 6 years I've been on the committee, I don't even recall this kind of request being made before, so it doesn't happen often.
So, it's significant in its importance. Is there any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor of funding the coordinating teaching and learning position in FY17? Opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for changing my mind.
Thank you for changing your mind.
I think that's all I need to say about my report. As usual, if you have questions about matters which are not discussed here, I'll do my best to answer them.
Question?
Yes.
See that a middle school art teacher is retiring next week.
Yes, that is entirely due to family circumstances, which are complex, and the right thing to do was to let her go and look after her family.
Be hiring someone to replace this person?
Yes. It may well be a long-term substitute initially.
And Paul?
I just have another personnel question, Mr. Farmer. The varsity assistant softball person is resigning immediately. I didn't even know we'd hired somebody yet. Do you know anything about that?
I don't, but I can get back to you about it.
Any other questions on Mr. Farmer's report?
Seeing none.
Next item on the agenda is the subcommittee reports. And this is Personnel and Negotiations Subcommittee, so I am going to defer to Dina and Mr. Farmer on this.
All right.
You're the boss.
As Mr. Farmer said, we have been negotiating with the PEC for insurance, making progress there. What is before us tonight, though, is the teachers' early retirement program that the superintendent and assistant superintendent have looked closely at, and I'll let you explain more of it if you don't mind.
Thank you. This only makes sense under certain circumstances when there's a body of people very close to retirement who might be incentivized to retire. And it clearly makes sense when, at the moment, we're looking to lose 9 elementary school teachers. And that means that because math specialists will bump down into classrooms if we cut 2 math specialists, 1 or 2 of the, if we do go forward with the IT media merger, some of them have rights to bump down. And the result is that A, you lose some bright young teachers, and B, you pay them unemployment to go away. And if you can avoid that by creating incentive for people to retire, it means that you can hold on to the younger, less expensive teachers and avoid paying them unemployment. Our analysis is that if we offer it to teachers who have 23 years of service in the district, so that they will have, essentially it's recognizing long service in the district, we will give priority to those with 25 years of service. They would need to retire from the Massachusetts Teachers Retirement Scheme. They would need to undertake that they would not seek unemployment eligibility arising from the fact that they are no longer working with this district. They would need to apply by March 28 It's very short, but it's before March 30th when you'll be setting the budget. And they would need to provide documentation verifying that they had retired before, I think we've got the figure of August 28, before the next school year starts. We would want documentation before we released the funds. That the funds earmarked are $20,000. Looking at the kind of profile of the 13 teachers who have got 25 years of service and will be eligible, we believe some of them will be interested. If everybody took us up, we would have a net loss this year that will be made up next year. So essentially, we would probably need to go into E&D to cover 120,000 this year. But then you make it up the following year. This is if unimaginably everybody went, and we know they won't because we know we haven't asked people because we're not entitled to, but we know enough about some circumstances and people talk about whether they're interested in retiring or not, so principals have an idea. Even if it was a kind of wash over 2 years, we would still make savings downstream because we would be appointing people at 55,000 instead of 80,000 people leaving. So, I mean, Brian is convinced that this makes sense, and he doesn't give money away lightly. So we think it is good for some teachers who are ready to go, maybe just looking to teach a year or two more, and this might be an incentive. It's good because we'll be holding on to some very good young teachers, and you'd probably be startled if, I'm not going to give you any names, but some of the teachers who will be casualties of bumping. And we don't pay people to go away. I find it very difficult to say to somebody, you know, we're going to be paying you not to be here and doing the good work that you're doing with children when there are really veteran teachers who really want to retire if they have a bit of an incentive. So that's the deal. If there's still headroom within the system after we've looked at those with 25 years, we'd look at those with 23 or more years. And there's a small number, I think it's 6 more in that group. There's nobody who's currently said they're retiring who will be entitled to the 20,000. That's one of the things you have to look at very carefully. Clearly, if there's a group of people who are already retiring, and we know they're retiring, and we're assuming that in the budget, to then pay them 20,000 doesn't make sense. So, you know, there are people retiring who will not qualify for this incentive. And the P&N committee is recommending it to you.
And can I just add that this is just for this year, like Mr.
Yes.
Farmer said, it is because of, like, I don't want to say the perfect storm, but because everything is aligning, that it would benefit some of the veteran teachers who would want to retire and also help us with a horrible budget this year.
So we'll make a motion and then ask for discussion. Could we have a motion to approve the Teachers Early Retirement Program for 2015-2016 school year as presented by Mr. Farmer and Dina?
I will make that motion.
Could we have a second?
I'll second.
Now, any questions or discussions for Mr. Farmer on that?
Ms. Farmer, I just had a couple of questions. On that part about eligibility, it talks about retirement by no later than August 26th. Why that date and not like a July 1st date? What my concern is, are they entitling themselves to another year?
No, their contract extends through to the start of the next school year anyway. That date simply means that they would not still be here when teachers were convening for the start of the new school year. And the other thing that's important is that typically the retirement board needs about 6 months' notice in order to process an application. So if we put a July 1 date down, some people would say, well, we can't go through the process in that time.
I just have one other question. That same section under D, it says confirm that they will not seek future unemployment benefit. Now, has that been run by legal or a school attorney? Because I have this gray dust in the back of my head that suggests that might not be legal.
I wish you hadn't asked that in public, but the answer is yes, we can't enforce it.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Questions? All those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you very much. I believe our work here is done for tonight, and you do have next Wednesday off, so cherish it.
Maybe.
Cherish it. Just to recap for
Brian,
everyone
bids
listening,
and bring us in.
on March 23rd is the date that we selected to have our discussion on any budget updates that may have come forward. And we have tentatively scheduled a 6:30 meeting with the District Communications Committee before that. So the District Communications would be 6:30, and our meeting would be at 7. March 30th is the date that we have selected for our final vote on the budget. Those just some reminders for everyone listening. Mr. Farmer?
I have some information to share. The girls' basketball team were tied 6-6 at the end of the first. They trailed 16-10 at the half, and they're trailing 29-24 at the end of the third.
Thank
and
you
they're
for
playing
the
one of the
update.
best teams around.
5-point game, no?
Well, thank you very much for that update.
That's Sean McInnes who's providing that data.
Could we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Make a motion.
Could we have a second? Nobody
Second.
wants to call. All those in favor? Thank you.